So, hello and welcome to another Deck Tech video with FaB. Today, I have with me Gregory Patellis and George Melissakis that are going to share their own experience and the deck that pretty much both took and won their RTN into their own cards. First of all, welcome and thanks for being here.
Hello, I'm happy to be here once again.
Hello, nice to see you.
So, Prism Awakener of Soul. I want. Okay, Gregory, you can kick it off and tell us why should anyone want to play Prism at this particular moment in the meta.
Prism is back, baby. Well, Prism is love. Prism is care. if you played the OG Prism, then you were itchy to play the new one with a new Luminaris, which is a game changer, and now you can, and it's actually a successful deck. So enough said, mic drop.
So both of us had a love for old Prism. We took her to a Pro Tour. Both of us made the top 32 finish in another Pro Tour each. And personally, that was my last time playing Prism because on the very next day she LL'd. So we didn't have a choice but to wait for a new Prism. Then we got new Prism, and new Prism just couldn't work with 32 health with the old Luminaries. But everything changed with heavy hitters and our new weapon.
Okay, so talk to us a bit about how the decks work. What's the game plan? What's the deck looking to do in order to beat a game?
George, want to start?
Yeah, sure. So let's start with our characters. So we have Prism, Awakener of Soul. The first thing everyone notices when seeing this character is that 32 on the bottom right there. So just 32 health. But why 32 health? We need to see the character ability. That's once per turn instant, pay 2 resources and banish a card from Soul to awaken a figment. So how do we get that figment? So the first part of our ability, whenever a herald is put in our soul during an action phase, that's very important because we need to note that that doesn't work with Genesis, which is at the beginning of the turn. So you do search for your deck for a figment and put it in the arena and shuffle. So those two, when combined, you can awaken a herald figments every time a herald goes to soul, which is very very important because first of all, every figment becomes a 4/4 ally with ward 4, so usually an extra 4 health. So that's not always the case though, because ward you need to break ward in order to prevent even one damage. So kodachis are especially effective, or ashwings are especially effective in dealing with dragons. So you do gain a bunch of extra health during the course of the game because you awaken at least 2 or 3 figments minimum. So you are not actually a 32 HP character. You're closer to 40 or 44 or something.
Yes. And with the new weapon, the lag, as we call it, as people call it, you don't have to pay 100,000 resources to do 2 attacks or 3 per turn. Uh, so
Or you could
now,
you could never do 3. It was once per turn, even if you pay the 2.
yeah, sadness. Well, now you can. Uh, and as we saw from Liverpool, from the Battle Hardened, the current iteration of the deck is only with Luminaris. You don't need Iris anymore, thankfully. Uh,
Okay, and what was that big change that actually, what was the thing that pushed the deck into the point that you no longer had any reason to use auras? And I want to also comment why I can see in the deck list that you guys are still running a bunch of auras like Genesis, like Merciful Retribution, like Parable of Humility. When are we using these cards?
So all our heralds have phantasm. So against decks that have lots of 6+ power attacks, you can't just throw heralds at face. They will be popped, and you'll do nothing in your turn. So rule of thumb: if your opponent runs lots of 6+ attacks, you will have to use auras. If they don't, you usually go full on heralds. So, do you want to talk matchups?
Yeah, so let's give us a quick way. I see you have a 42 main deck and a bunch of cards in your sideboard. So yeah, talk us a bit through when are we using each card.
Okay, I'll start with the aura plan and let Gregory talk about the herald plan.
Yes.
So let's start with the aura plan. So we do need lots of yellows in order for our weapon to work. So we will side in against Guardians, against Yuzuri, against Brutes, against Vincent. All those are decks with lots of 6+ power attacks. We'll side in all our Spectra from our inventory. So that would be Arclight Sentinel, that would be Genesis, that would be Parable of Humility, and probably most important of all, Merciful Retribution. So
What an
the main,
amazing card.
yeah, I do think it's the best card in the deck in those matchups. So it's just jack of all trades. So
Exactly.
what's your plan against those matchups? Usually those decks are kind of slow. They don't have lots of action points, don't have lots of go again. So they will usually have trouble clearing a Spectra as well as an Angel or two Spectras or any combination. So the plan against them is just to overload them with threats. So in order to do that, it's very important to use your chess piece. So we will be using Vestige of Soul, which effectively turns our yellows into blues and our blues into super blues. So it will be very common in your games to pitch like 2, 3, or even more cards. So to have like more than 10 resources in a turn. And in order to be more explosive in your combo, your actually combo deck, you will need to use Tomes of Divinity. So in order to effectively use the tome, you'll need to have a card put into your soul and pay 4, draw 3, one tome draws the other, and so goes it. So the main plan is to usually just throw at least 2 threats at once or no threat at all. Because if you play against a slow guardian, a Victor for example, if I just play a Genesis, it would just be hammered down, so that will do effectively nothing. So I usually want to play at least 2 threats at once, so my opponent will have the choice of what to clear or maybe nothing. Who knows if I am low enough on health. So that's the whole plan. Just throw lots of things at once, survive, and hope to overwhelm with Spectres and Angels.
Okay, I
Yes.
want to take a note here. I mean, there are also a lot of other auras in Prism. Why are we using Parable of Humility, for instance?
So in those popper matchups, so Parable will be a low priority Spectre to deal with. So it will probably stay in the arena for at least 2 or 3 turns. So you need to clear Genesis, you need to clear Merciful and Angel. So it will provide quite a lot of value with that -1 attacks. Also, that's one of the things we changed from Rob Catton's list from Liverpool. He was playing the Celestial Reprimand, so the yellow one, for -2 as an anti-popper. So Parable kinda does the same work against like exactly 6 attacks or 7 attacks if we are having Triumph or uh, Figment of Triumph. So it's kinda like the Celestial Reprimand, but it stays on board. So and you also need some more threats to just throw at your opponent when you do your whole combo with Tomes of Divinity. And Reprimand would not help in such situation, but Parable will actually stay on board and be one more threat your opponent has to deal with. So why are we using these auras? So Genesis, pretty self-explanatory. We have trouble putting heralds into soul in such matchups. So we need to build soul somehow in order to awaken our figments and also activate their abilities. And the merciful, oh merciful, the star of the show. So merciful actually helps us put things into soul, and especially heralds in our action phase. So if we attack with a herald and it gets popped, you can at instant speed play merciful retribution. So your herald will go indeed to soul. This will trigger prism, so you have to search for a figment. And also it will ping for 1 arcane, which is pretty important. So especially if your opponent doesn't run at least one AB, The one arcane every time any aura dies. Keep in mind and also count for token auras like Spectral Shields or even Ponders.
For Ponder.
Well, arcane damage from Ponder is just chef's kiss. It's so good. So every time any aura goes away and or every herald is destroyed by Spectra, you will deal one arcane damage, and it quickly adds up if your opponent doesn't have AB. So you can easily have like 5 or 6 spectral shields, take the damage, just play merciful, ping for 5 or 6 arcane. It's just so good. Also, your opponent has to worry if they're very low on HP during the last turns. So you can always like ping the last 1 or 2 points of damage with merciful.
Mm-hmm.
We also have the Arclight Sentinel, which is pretty important in those matchups as well. So Arclight Sentinel is your most expensive aura. It costs 6, which sounds a bit expensive, but if you do keep in mind that we do run our Vestige, it will usually be played with 2 yellows or maybe a blue and a yellow, which is pretty good. So if you cheat on your pitch, it's not that expensive.
Okay, and I want to mention also the Angelic Wrath a lot, but I guess that's going to be Gregory's, job, since he's going to talk about the more
It's
aggressive
most
game plan. So, Gregory, what are we doing versus the more aggressive decks? The Warriors, the Ninjas, and all that shenanigans.
yes. Let me comment on the aura plan. One thing
Mhm.
that because what George says is of course how you win, but how do you reach your win condition? How do you get the upper hand in the game? You want, because if you play, as George said, one aura per turn, that's fair, and they will just pop your attack your spectra, okay? And this doesn't help you. It fatigues your aura deck, okay? So you want to play two, as George said, to get this unfair advantage. As a rule of thumb, this snowball that goes into attrition has the keyword unfair. That's what you want against heavy popper matchups.
So
To get
not
this
just Spectres,
unfair
not just
thing.
Spectres, Spectres and or Angels. So that's all your threats.
Yeah, of course. So against decks that don't run heavy number of poppers and are fast, you go for the value game of the new Prism, and the angels are so value. So you want your angels to hit or draw enough cards from your opponent's hand, okay? And usually against ninja, for example, you get the value there. When they want to block you, you have Angelic Wrath, you have your Dominates through Herald of Tenacity, which is an amazing card in this build, because it either hits or it grinds your opponent's gear. So your Heralds or Tenacities or
Erudition.
Herald of Erudition hit in the mid to late game. Angelic Wrath helps. It is a playable card. You don't only pitch this card, and you just profit from all this value of this deck. It's much more straightforward. Not easy, but much more straightforward than the aura plan. And I think around 1/3 of the game is when you will activate your Halo. Also in the aura plan, but especially when you have fewer turns in the game.
So Halo is absolutely the most important card of the deck. It's your Jack of all trades card. So it's one card, instant. You pay 1, and you put a card from your hand to your soul. If it's a light, draw a card. You usually put your soul. You put a Herald in your soul, so that will trigger Prism. So you have effectively an instant speed search for whatever figment you want at any time you want. So you can help your heralds hit if they are popped. For example, you can bring the figment of triumph for a -1 on their attack. Or you can also disrupt your opponent. Maybe a Katsu or a Vincent want to play something for the banish zone. You
No.
nope, just say no, you won't do that. So
Yes.
you just bring your good old figment of judgment and flip it face down. So effectively, it cannot be played. or you just survive a little bit more. So grab a shield, make something, or bring your most important angel, Suraya. So I do think Suraya is the most important angel in every matchup with Popper Heavy or Aggro, because it's just unfair. So she attacks for 4. She'll probably have go again from your new weapon, and you just, if you have one extra card in Soul, you just banish it and draw 2 cards. And that's fair, isn't it?
Exactly.
That's very fair.
Of course, of course. The thing with Suraya is that you have to be a bit careful. Not when you bring her. You bring her when you don't have an arsenal, because she comes with a ponder. But the important thing is, when do you awaken her? If you can wait until late game, so you can block with 3 cards and go Suraya, go again, draw 2 Herald, that's an insane value of a 4-card hand. If you're not on the ropes and you have to survive, you have to wait for Suraya. Have her there, sleeping in her Figment mode, and at some point she does the bomb. Also, another trick with Halo is to bring Ravage. If for example you have a ninja with a 5-card hand, and they go to your angels first, you just bring Ravages, 1 damage to you, the angel pops, no go again. That's very
Yeah.
nifty.
Bonus point if you manage to play an Arclight Sentinel with Suraya on board. So she will draw again next turn, and maybe again and again and again. So if you can do the Sentinel loop, so Sentinel loop is very important in
Yes.
the Popper matchups. So it all revolves around an Arclight Sentinel and Figment of Rebirth, especially the Archangel of Rebirth. So if you have a
And
Sentinel
Genesis.
and Genesis, yeah, if you have enough soul, however much soul you want. So if you have like more than enough cards in soul or a Genesis on board, so you can usually just loop Sentinel over and over again. So if Archangel of Rebirth attacks, you'll remove a card from soul and target the Sentinel from your discard and put it on top of your deck. So if you do have another Sentinel already on board, you can just play it again next turn and again and again and again. Keep in mind this will not work if you have a Merciful on board, because Sentinel will not go to discard and just go to Soul instead. So if you want to Sentinel noob someone, be careful not to have a Merciful on board. So
This
that's
is
effectively, you create however many shields you want. It costs you 1 card from your deck, so it's a little bit dangerous. So you can deck out yourself if you're not careful. But that's a pretty good way to stall the game and build some shields if you are low and survive long enough to win with your angels and specters.
Okay, I see. I want to also ask about United We Stand. Why are we using United We Stand and not another 6 power card like Command and Conquer or something else with a more relevant text?
because it's yellow, and because it's yellow. So first of all, you can pitch it if needed.
Because
Uh,
it's yellow and light. It's the
and light,
only
yes,
it's the only
exactly.
other yellow light popper other than Celestial Cataclysm.
Exactly, and it's also a yellow action card, which you can bring back with Rebirth, with Figment or the Angel. So you can have more poppers this way. They're not red and non-light to disturb your pitching process, and I think it's very solid.
Okay,
So
and I guess regarding the Goliath Gauntlets and the Amphibian Rapture, you bring those in the aggressive matchups, I figure.
Goliath Gauntlet, you bring it whenever you don't have arcane threat from your opponent. Okay, if your opponent can do arcane damage, then you put your gloves. Otherwise, you have your Goliath. Uh, the Rapture is against aggro matchups.
So even arcane damage 1 is very important to be able to block it, because it will actually kill your ward 4 angels. You don't have an option there. So against any deck that can do at least 1 damage, that will include Dromai, Mirror, Kano, and every sort of Rune Blade, you have to respect that one arcane damage, or you lose some angels for effectively one health, which is not ideal.
Okay, I see. So now we can, you can also now give a bit of your feedback. I mean, you both won an RTN with this list, and did you guys want to say anything about how your matches went, how you felt this deck rolled? I mean, a quick, shortcut about how the RTN for both of you looked like. Gregory, do you want to start?
Yeah, I can start because I won an RTN the first week. So it was a bit of another iteration of the deck. Like it had three different cards. I played That All You Got.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't play the United We Stand. I didn't face an illusionist, so that was okay. First of all, great tournament at Evora from Weatherlight Games. Um, I played against many Azaleas, which is a very good matchup for Prism. Against the Katsu in the top 8. Then on the final, I faced a Kano, which is also a very good matchup for Prism. Although he played really well and made me sweat a bit, but I crossed the line. And I also played. I had one loss against Boltin, which really rushed me. And I had a very interesting match against Kasai. And there, I had to go for the unfair aura plan, and just build the board that can overload her. I also kind of built a rebirth lock with my Genesis, so I could have enough shields, so it's relevant for me their damage, and it did the work.
Okay. That's interesting. Since we talked a bit about the card, sorry guys for that, but I just
So,
saw a card. I had totally
excuse me.
forgot. Sorry, yeah, go on.
And also Alevia, which was a popper matchup, and the Aura plan worked there.
Okay, so you played in the top eight. You played versus what was your top eight again? Sorry.
Uh, Katsu, Azalea, and Kano.
Okay. And what about you, George? And I will ask about Soraya later. What about you, George?
Okay. So I played almost exclusively against popper matchups. So I had to face Vincent in Swiss, then Levia, then Yuzuri, then Dromai, which was not ideal. And top 8 was even worse, was a Victor, the same Levia from Swiss, and the final boss was a very aggressive Bravo. I mean, every one of those matchups is not what you want to see, what you play against. But we do have a plan. We do have our auras. We do have our angels, and every one of those is now pretty beatable. So I will not say their Prism is favored against all those decks. I don't think she is, but it's now pretty even, depends on the build of each side. And we have to note here that since she's a pretty new deck, lots of people don't have the required experience to play against it. So some people might make some more mistakes in the first few weeks before they actually know how to play against the deck, especially people who started much later in the game and haven't played against Alt Prism, which shares a lot of the same tricks. So that helps a lot for now, but this will not be the case in the next few weeks.
Okay. That's really nice to hear that she actually does manage to have a plan against these, heavy, six
Popper
power
decks.
decks, and Phantasm is not such a big of a deal. But I really want to ask you, sorry for coming back, about Invoke Suraya, because we talked a lot about the Archangel Suraya, but I never got to ask about Invoke Suraya and what this card does in the deck.
So worst case scenario, it's a light illusionist block 3, non-attack, which is fine.
Yellow.
Yellow, yeah, always yellow. And best case scenario, she can really help you win matchups when you are very low in health. So, for example, you're like at 1 health, you have a Genesis down and not much else. So, you're in a pretty rough spot if your opponent is like at 10 or 20. So Genesis will indeed create a Spectral Shield if you put a Light Illusionist in Soul, and you can use the Spectral Shield to play Invoke Sur and attack for 4 plus 1 Arcane. That 1 Arcane will probably go through or take a card from your opponent's hand, which is great. And then the 4 attack will probably go through for at least 1 damage and get a card from your opponent's hand for sure, because no one wants you to heal 4 for no reason. So she will actually, with her ward 4, she's more like a 10 value play or even more. So it's pretty good against heavy popper decks. So bonus points, it's the only angel which is an action, so you can bring it back with the first part of Figment of Rebirth. So you can actually play her twice or even more if you want with Archangel of Rebirth. So it's also very important in popper matchups that go into fatigue. So having to play her twice is very, very important, because one more threat for your opponent has to deal with, and it's the only threat that can be brought back with Figment of Rebirth.
Okay, that's super interesting to hear. So, if you are before we close up, what do you want to play against as Prism? What's the field will look like if you want to bring Prism into a tournament? What the field should look like, Gregory? What do you feel like?
Okay, I think from the relevant decks of the last weeks, your best matchups are against Azalea and Kana. Okay, you have a huge advantage against them. You will see them. You're super okay with Katsu, I think. I mean, okay, it's a very playable matchup, but you feel okay going into a round with a Katsu. And I think you have an all-around okay ratio. Consistency is a something you should be very aware about for your deck, but the reps make it better.
Okay. Okay, and George, what do you feel like are the worst matchups for the hero?
So I definitely don't want to face any draw mice, because your angel's worst enemy is Kodachis and Ashwings. So especially if a Dromai happens to have a very good start and you're left behind, it's really hard to catch up. So that would be one of the worst matchups. And I don't really want to face brutes because, okay, they have poppers, but they also have their scabs, so they can actually create action points and they can deal with multiple of your threats at once. They also have lots of go again. So killing an angel and one, maybe two specters is something that can happen against brutes. So it will always be very rough matchups.
Okay, that was a good explanation. So, guys, again, thanks a lot for being here. You will find the
Thank you.
list down below with the sideboard guide. Again, thanks for being here, George and Gregory. Thank you for being here and sharing your amazing run with Prism. And see you around.
Thank you. See you around.
See you.